On Thanksgiving, my wife raised a glass, smiled at our kids, and made me her punchline. I've always believed that family dinners, especially around the holidays, should be sacred. They should be safe harbors, warm, steady moments you can return to when the rest of life feels rough. I tried to build that kind of home, the kind where laughter was genuine and the kids always knew they were safe. My name is Adam Bryant, and I work in logistics management for a regional food distributor. It's not a glamorous job, but it's stable, pays well, and gave us a good life in the suburbs of Chicago. I was never the flashy type. I didn't care about climbing the corporate ladder or building a perfect, curated image. I was the kind of man who came home at 6 o'clock every single night, the kind who remembered anniversaries, who built towering Lego monstrosities with my son, and who filmed every middle school band concert. I thought I was doing everything right. I truly believed that love, at its core, was about consistency, about showing up every single day without fail. So, when my wife, Rachel, stood up in front of our entire extended family on Thanksgiving Day and said what she said, something inside me didn't just crack. It shattered. We had this tradition, one Rachel herself had started years ago. At Thanksgiving dinner, right after the turkey was carved and before the pumpkin pie, everyone at the table was supposed to go around and share the biggest lesson they'd learned that year. It was meant to be heartfelt, a moment of gratitude and reflection. My son, Caleb, who was 12, said he'd learned that coding his first simple video game was harder, but more fun than just playing them. My daughter, Sophia, 10, said she'd realized that being popular isn't the same as having real friends. Even Rachel's father shared a touching, if predictable, anecdote about learning to accept that retirement wasn't an end, but a new beginning. Then it was Rachel's turn. She raised her glass of white wine, about half full, and scanned the table. They were glassy, sharp, and focused. She was calm, almost rehearsed. She looked right at me. My biggest lesson this year, she began, a small, tight smile on her face. Don't marry a man like my husband. A beat of suffocating silence hung in the air. It was the kind of profound quiet where the sudden click and hum of the air handler kicking on felt impossibly loud. He is one of my greatest regrets. And then came the laughter, not a few awkward chuckles, but big, rolling laughter. Rachel's sister, her father, even my own brother let out a bark of surprised amusement. I looked at my children. Caleb and Sophia looked at their mother, saw her smiling, triumphant, and, seeking her approval, joined in. They laughed. They laughed at me. They mocked me. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold rush that left my skin tingling. In that moment, I saw everything with a horrifying, absolute clarity. I saw the past 5 years of quiet humiliation, of her dismissive comments in front of friends, of the nights she came home late smelling like a cologne I didn't wear. I thought about the work trips that left her energized and distant. I thought about the thousands of tiny compromises I had made, the thousands of times I had swallowed my pride, all in the name of keeping the peace, of preserving the sacred family I thought I was protecting. I thought about the lies I had chosen to believe because the truth would have been too painful to dismantle my life. I let her humiliate me in silence, telling myself I was being the bigger man. I wasn't. I was just disappearing. But this time, she didn't just cross a line in private. She gathered our family, including our children, and staged a public execution of my dignity. And for what? A laugh. A fleeting high from the shock value? That was the instant of clarity. Love cannot coexist with contempt. It simply expires. It died right there, not with a sound, but with absolute finality, laid out between the gravy boat and the half-eaten green bean casserole. The laughter finally died down into awkward titters. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to laugh it off, to be the good sport, the butt of the joke one more time. I cleared my throat. The room went silent again. I looked directly at Rachel, holding her gaze until her smile wavered. You can forget about being married to me starting today, I said, my voice even, cold, and final. The confusion on her face was immediate. The joke wasn't funny anymore. I didn't say another word. I just sat there while the rest of the dinner dissolved into awkward, quiet conversations about the weather and Black Friday sales. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, the glow of the computer screen illuminating the framed photos on my desk, photos of a family I realized no longer existed. I felt no flash of rage, no impulse for revenge. What settled over me was something far colder and clearer, an absolute, unshakable certainty. It was the kind of resolve forged only after years of internalizing pain and slowly erasing yourself to fit into a space that was never meant for you. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to hurt her back. I just wanted my life back. The one I had given away, piece by piece, thinking I was being noble, when really I was just disappearing. Just before 11 o'clock that night, I called my lawyer and left a message on his voicemail. "Michael, it's Adam Bryant. I'm ready. Please file the papers first thing in the morning." What people never tell you about the final betrayal is that it doesn't always come with a slamming door or a dramatic confession. Sometimes it comes with laughter in wine glasses at a dinner table full of people who treat your pain like it's dessert. That night, Rachel had taken off the mask completely, and I saw her for who she truly was. Someone who didn't just fall out of love, but someone who found joy in my humiliation. That was the final straw. There's a specific kind of ache that comes from loving someone who doesn't love you back the same way. Not with cruelty, but with carelessness. That's how Rachel had loved me for years. Carelessly. And for most of that time, I made excuses for her, blindfolding myself with the same threadbare hope that had kept our marriage afloat far longer than it should have lasted. I spent so many mornings brushing off her distance as stress from her marketing job, her late nights as dedication to her team, her lack of affection as just a phase. But deep down, in the place you don't talk about, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't one big thing. It was the 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Her phone suddenly flipped screen down on the nightstand every time I walked into the room. The way her tone shifted from warm to clipped when I asked how her day was. The nights she came home and went straight to the shower, her clothes holding a scent I couldn't place. And yet, I said nothing. I told myself to wait, that maybe she'd come back to me in her own time. The first time I knew, it wasn't even because I went looking. It was our anniversary, a Tuesday, and I'd left work early. I decided to surprise her at her office. I stopped by a bakery she liked, picked up her favorite cupcakes, and walked into her downtown office building with that stupid, hopeful excitement you feel when you're about to do something sweet. When I got to her floor, I saw them through the large glass wall of the main conference room. She and her boss, Mark. They were sitting far too close, heads bent together over a laptop. His hand was resting on her arm, just above the elbow, rubbing it slowly, possessively. She was laughing, tilting her head back in that way she used to with me, a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't just the physical touch. It was the intimacy, the sheer comfort they had with each other. The air between them was electric, private. I didn't interrupt. I just stood there for a second, the box of cupcakes feeling impossibly heavy. Then I turned around, walked back to the elevator, and left. The cupcakes stayed in my car until they melted into a sugary mess 2 days later. That night, I told her I had a headache and went to bed early. She didn't even notice. You would think that would be enough. That kind of slap in the face. But I convinced myself I'd misread it. That he was just a touchy boss. That it was innocent. That was the lie I chose to sleep with, because the truth meant dismantling everything. The home, the history, the kids' lives. I wasn't ready. The second time, there was no deniability. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. Normally, I wouldn't look. I wasn't that guy. But something, instinct, or maybe just the slow-burning anger finally clawing its way out, pushed me. It buzzed, and a preview lit up the screen. "Mark, last night was fire. Can't wait for the conference." My heart hammered against my ribs. Her passcode was our anniversary. The irony was so bitter it almost made me laugh. I opened the messages. It was all there. Weeks, months of conversations. Pictures I didn't want to see. Emojis she hadn't used with me since we were dating. Flirty, detailed, bold. She called him babe. They were planning a trip to Napa, disguised as a marketing conference I knew nothing about. I didn't read all of it. I couldn't. I just saw enough to know this wasn't new. This had been her life for a long time. That night, I sat in the living room while she slept, the TV flickering silently, and I cried. I hadn't cried in years. But knowing the woman I loved was giving herself to another man, and didn't even have the decency to hide it properly, broke something sacred in me. And still, I said nothing. I wish I could say I stayed silent because I was strong or patient. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of breaking the family apart. afraid of what it would mean for Caleb and Sophia to grow up in two homes. I had always told myself that no matter what happened, I would never be the reason my kids saw a divorce. So, I wore my silence like a shield. I kept going to work. I kept packing school lunches. I kept buying flowers every second Friday because that was our old tradition, even though they usually ended up wilted in the trash by Monday. I stayed. I endured. And every day that passed, I lost another piece of myself. My friend David, who'd been through a messy divorce himself, noticed the change in me long before anyone else. We were at Green's pub one night in June, watching a Cubs game, and he turned to me out of nowhere. "You don't smile anymore, man. Not for real." I brushed him off, told him work was stressful, but he didn't buy it. He knew. And when I finally told him in October, the whole story, the affair, the humiliation, he didn't say, "Leave her." He just said, "Don't lose yourself trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved." I didn't understand it then, but I did on Thanksgiving. Looking back, I don't regret staying as long as I did. I needed to be sure. I needed to exhaust every possibility before I could walk away without guilt. I didn't want to make a decision from anger. I wanted clarity. And on Thanksgiving night, when Rachel made me the punchline of her year, she gave it to me. The final, glaring confirmation that I wasn't just unloved. I was unwanted. And in that moment, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was done. Fully, completely, irrevocably done. The morning after Thanksgiving, the air felt different. Not colder. The November chill already had its grip, but quieter, like the whole world was holding its breath. I got up early, long before the kids stirred or Rachel came down in her robe, ready to pretend nothing had happened. I made a pot of coffee, sat alone in the kitchen, and watched the steam curl from the mug. My phone buzzed at 3 minutes past 7. A message from my attorney. "Papers filed. Courier is en route. Will arrive by 8:30. I didn't feel triumph, just a strange, hollow calmness. I hadn't second-guessed myself, not once. Rachel came downstairs at 8:15, her hair still damp. She walked into the kitchen with that casual, self-assured stride she always had after one of her jokes, as if she'd scored a point. She poured herself a cup of coffee without saying good morning, expecting me to carry on with my usual wounded silence. The doorbell rang at 8:28. I signed the courier's clipboard and took the thick, official-looking envelope. I walked back into the kitchen and slid it across the granite island. "What's this?" she asked, half smirking, her tone laced with that familiar, sarcastic edge. "Divorce papers," I said. Her eyebrows rose. She scoffed, a short, sharp laugh. "Are you serious?" she said, as if I'd handed her a prank from a cereal box. "Because of what I said last night? Adam, you are being ridiculous." "It wasn't a joke, Rachel," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the emotion she was expecting. "It was the truth. And the fact that you said it so proudly, so publicly, tells me everything I need to know." Her hands trembled slightly, the coffee mug rattling in its saucer. The gravity was finally landing. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her voice louder now. "Over one comment? You're going to blow up our whole marriage? What about the kids?" That was when I stood up. "Where was that concern last night?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Where was it when you let them laugh at me like I was a clown in your act?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in memory, she had no comeback. She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door. I didn't follow. I didn't comfort. I rinsed out my mug, started the dishwasher, and went upstairs to pack a suitcase. I wasn't staying. I had already booked a room at a residence inn just off the highway. I sent her a simple text. "I'll be staying elsewhere until this is finalized. We'll sort out a schedule for the kids." By the time I closed the front door behind me, duffel bag in hand, I felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but free. I met the kids for pizza that Saturday. Rachel dropped them off, her eyes bitter. She tried to act civil, but the resentment was rolling off her in waves. The kids sat across from me in the booth, picking at their food. "Why are you leaving, Daddy?" Sophia asked, her voice small. "This isn't your fault. This is a grown-up problem between me and your mom. We just can't make each other happy anymore, and we keep hurting each other's feelings. So, the best way to stop the hurt is to live in different houses." Caleb frowned. "But Mom said it was just a joke." I looked at him, remembering how much that laughter at the table had hurt. "It wasn't just the joke, son. It was that the joke felt like the final brick in a long wall. It was about all the times before that. All the different ways she made me feel small, like my feelings just didn't matter. Don't talk about me like that to them. Rachel snapped from the door. I looked her dead in the eye. You stopped worrying about what they heard a long time ago. She left in a huff, but the kids saw something new in that moment. Me, standing firm. Me, not apologizing for being disrespected. In our home, I'd always been the quiet, predictable, forgiving one. Now I was the man who said enough. The next 14 days were quiet. I journaled. I went to the gym. I slept better than I had in a decade. I didn't spiral. I just existed. And it felt good to exist without being reduced. Meanwhile, Rachel kept trying to save face. She posted cheerful photos on social media, her and the kids at the ice rink, smiling at brunch with her sister. No mention of me. The comments were fawning, beautiful family, and you're glowing, girl. Maybe she thought she was winning by performing normalcy for the world. But I wasn't unraveling. I was rebuilding. Then David called me. It was a Tuesday night, just after 9 o'clock. Man, you are not going to believe this, he said, not even waiting for a hello. I just left a buddy's place in Willow Creek Estates. You know, that gated neighborhood? I know it, I said. Rachel was there, outside one of the houses. I sat up straight. Mark's house, I said. It was a statement, not a question. I'm guessing, yeah? She was just sitting on the curb. Looked like she'd been crying. This guy, older, looked like a real piece of work, came out. An older man came out, didn't even let her in, pointed at her car, and said, "Go home, Rachel. It's over," then went right back inside. I didn't ask any more questions. That image was enough. Rachel, the woman who mocked me at Thanksgiving, was now sitting outside another man's house like unwanted baggage. Not his lover, not his priority, just a problem to be dismissed. She had bet everything on the fantasy, and men like Mark don't leave their comfortable lives. They just use, enjoy, and discard. 2 days later, I heard the knock on my hotel room door. It was just before sunrise. I opened it. There she was, in sweatpants and a hoodie, no makeup, her eyes puffy and red. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice cracking. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the bed like a guest in a stranger's home. "I made a mistake," she started. "A terrible, terrible mistake." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. I thought there was more with him. I thought he cared, but I was wrong. She wiped at her eyes. "He's not leaving his wife. He never planned to. He told me that after I left, after you served the papers." She took a shaky breath. I looked at her, really looked at her. The fluorescent light from the cheap hotel hallway strip lit her from behind, casting her face in a sickly, gray shadow. This wasn't the triumphant, cutting woman from Thanksgiving, holding a wine glass like a scepter, her eyes glittering with white wine and a cruel, practiced confidence. That woman had been sharp, coiffed, armored in her best clothes, ready to perform. She finally spoke, her voice small, cracked, and directed at the ugly, patterned comforter she was twisting in her hands. "He ended it," she said. It was flat, a statement of fact offered into the dead air. I didn't say anything. I just stood by the door, my arms crossed, my keys still in my hand. The metal was cold. I didn't move. I didn't sit. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I wasn't going to be her comfort. That job was permanently vacant. "Mark," she clarified, as if I didn't know exactly who she meant. As if his name hadn't been a ghost in our house for the last year. He told me he was never leaving his wife." Her voice hitched, and a small, pathetic sound, half sob, half gasp, escaped her. "He said I was a fun distraction, but that I needed to be realistic. He said I was making things complicated now that you'd served the papers." She took a shaky breath and finally, met my gaze. The tears that had been welling up finally spilled over, cutting clean tracks through the grime on her cheeks. I watched them fall, and I felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. I felt a cold, bitter validation. I saw with perfect, terrible clarity that these tears weren't for me. They weren't for our family, or for the years we'd built, or for the children she had momentarily forgotten. They were tears of pure, unadulterated self-pity. She hadn't lost her husband. She had lost her prize. She hadn't betrayed her family. She had simply made a bad bet. "Adam," she whispered, the word cracking, desperate. She slid off the bed, taking a half step toward me, her hands open and pleading. "Adam, I made a terrible, terrible mistake. A horrible mistake. I see that now. I was so stupid. I was angry, and I want to come home. There it was. The word. Home. She said it as if it were a physical object, a bus station she could just return to after missing her connection. She was standing here, in my sterile, temporary room at the Residence Inn, a room I was only in because of her betrayal, asking to be let back into the life she had systematically dismantled. The confusion in my mind wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard, structural clarity. Home. I repeated. The word felt foreign, like something from a language I no longer spoke. What home, Rachel? There is no home. You're standing in a hotel room that I've been living in for 2 weeks. The house. That building. It isn't a home anymore. It's just property. It's an asset we have to divide. The house, she said, her voice rising with a desperate, familiar frustration. Our life. The kids. I want to come back. I want us to be a family again. I'll fix it. I promise. I'll do anything. I almost laughed. It was a bitter, cold impulse that died in my throat. Fix it. A family? Is that what we were on Thanksgiving, Rachel? When you stood at the head of our table, in front of my brother and your father, in front of our children, and you executed me. Was that you being family? It was a joke, she cried, jumping to her feet. The sudden movement made her seem manic, cornered. I was drinking. I was angry at you. I was just trying to get a reaction. I didn't mean it like that. You know I didn't. Stop, I said. My voice was low, but it cut through her panic like a knife. She froze. Stop lying. To me, and to yourself. It wasn't a joke. It was a performance. You rehearsed it. I saw it on your face. You stood there, and you called me your greatest regret. You didn't just let them laugh, Rachel. You led them. You smiled when our son and daughter looked at you for permission, and you taught them, in that one single, shattering moment, that it was okay to mock me, that their father's feelings were worthless, that his humiliation was the night's entertainment. That's what you did with your joke. Her face crumpled. The anger drained away, replaced by that raw, desperate panic. That's not. Adam, he dumped me. She choked on the words. He left me. I have nowhere else to go. You're my husband. You're supposed to. You have to take me back. Please. It's me. It's us. She surged forward and grabbed my arm. Her fingers were cold, and they dug into my sleeve. I looked down at her hand on my arm, and then I looked at her face. And I felt revulsion. I physically recoiled, pulling my arm free from her grasp as if she'd burned me. No, I said. The word was simple. Final. She staggered back, as if I'd slapped her. I am not your husband, I said, shaking my head slowly. A husband is a partner. A husband is someone you respect, or at least pretend to. I was your janitor, Rachel. I was the man who quietly cleaned up your emotional messes. I was your bank. I was the reliable, boring, safe man you could despise while you were out having your fun. Her mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. You don't miss me. I continued, my voice as cold and steady as the November air outside. You don't love me. You're not even sorry for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught, and you're sorry your real plan fell through. You're not here because you had an epiphany. You're here because the man you gambled everything on called you a distraction. You didn't come running back to me, Rachel. You just ran out of other options. I walked over to the hotel room door and pulled it open wide. I didn't just crack it. I opened it all the way, flooding the dim, sad room with the unflattering, steady light of the hallway. I will always be the father of our children, I said, standing aside to give her a clear path out. I will be respectful in front of them. We will figure out custody. We will figure out the house. But I will never be your husband again. I will not raise my son to believe this. This contempt, this humiliation, is what a man should accept from a partner. And I will not raise my daughter to believe this is how a woman should treat someone she supposedly loves. You can't, she whispered, staring at the open doorway as if it were a cliff's edge. Adam, please, don't do this. I'm not doing this, Rachel, I said. You did. You made your choice on Thanksgiving. You made it every time you met him. This is just the consequence. Now, please, leave. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, the full, crushing weight of the word, done, finally landing on her. She grabbed her purse from the bed, her movements jerky and robotic. She wouldn't look at me. I watched her walk to the elevator, her shoulders slumped in that faded hoodie. She didn't look back. I closed the door, slid the heavy deadbolt, and leaned my forehead against the cool, solid wood. The silence of the room settled around me. It wasn't the agonizing silence of a broken marriage. It wasn't the lonely silence of a man waiting for a wife who would never come home. It was just silence. The absence of a weight I had carried for years. The absence of dread. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, it felt like peace. It felt clean. It felt free.